She laughed. Not even a small one. A full-on, shoulders-shaking, tear-forming kind of laugh. I told her my dream. That the wedding was actually a funeral. That I stood there in a suit I couldn't move in, surrounded by people I barely recognized. And instead of a ring, I held a wilted bouquet. And instead of a "you may now kiss the bride," there was silence. No music. Just a casket. She laughed. You're so dramatic, Curtis. You know what no one tells you? That people rarely snap. It's not one moment. It's 1,000 paper cuts. Tiny, stupid things that don't bleed until they do. Like the way she rearranged the silverware drawer without telling me. Like how she started locking her phone when she used to leave it face up, buzzing with chaos and memes. Like the playlist she made called Then. Like the fact that I knew who he was before she said his name. Silas. I had never met him. Never seen his face. But I knew him like a myth. Like a ghost that never left the house. He was the one she referenced when she compared books. When she critiqued poems. When she said, "You just don't get it," she meant, "You're not Silas." And now, guess who got an RSVP in our mailbox? In our mailbox? Silas. With a +1. She hadn't told me he was invited. But when I held the envelope in my hands and saw his name in perfect cursive, it felt like being sucker-punched by a memory that wasn't even mine. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. Of course she didn't. She leaned against the counter, sipping oat milk and blinking like I was a child throwing a tantrum. It's not that deep, Curtis. We're adults. Adults. Adults don't invite the ghost of their past into the future they're building with someone else. Adults don't label their ex as the real poet in my life, in a caption I wasn't supposed to see. I'm not proud of what I did next. I canceled the catering. I erased the Spotify playlist we made for the reception. I called my mother and told her to return the shoes. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just folded. Like a bad chair at a worse party. Now she's texting me. Saying I'm overreacting. Saying it was a joke. Saying Silas is married now. And I'm insecure. And she didn't mean it when she called him the love of her life during brunch with her sister. But I've stopped reading her messages. Instead, I've been rewatching the video I took of our dog chasing fireflies last summer. Because in that 30-second clip, everything felt real. And right now, nothing does. The first thing I did after she fell asleep was go looking for that playlist. It had been bugging me all day. The name of it, the way her face subtly changed when her sister brought it up at lunch. You still listen to Then? She had asked, teasing. Emily had just smiled. Not the big, toothy one she gives me when I surprise her with pastries. This one was tight-lipped, far off. Nostalgic. It was that smile. The same one she wore when we drove past the cabin in Maine, and she whispered, I haven't been back here since, well, never mind. So when she drifted off to sleep beside me, still pretending that everything was fine, I took her phone. Not to spy. I swear it wasn't like that. I just needed context. Peace. Something. I opened Spotify. Searched through her library. There it was. Then, the cover was a black and white photo of a dock I didn't recognize. Foggy water. No people. Just emptiness. The songs? They weren't ours. None of them were the ones we slow danced to in the kitchen. None of them were the indie bands we discovered on late-night road trips. These were different. Brooding. Lyrical. Every track title felt like a whisper. April Rain. Letters I Burned. Quiet When You Go. I hit play, and my heart sank. Because on the 5th track, a spoken-word poem layered over soft guitar, I heard his voice. Silas. I didn't even have to ask. I knew it. The cadence. The phrasing. The way he said her name like it was part of the wind. She had been listening to his voice. Over and over. In secret. Like a ritual. I sat in the dark, the phone trembling in my hands, and tried not to scream. The next morning, I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I smiled like a coward, poured her coffee, and asked if she wanted to finalize the seating chart. She said sure. I watched her cross off names, circle a few, and then, casually, as if she were deciding between chicken or salmon, she said, I put Silas at table 7. With the musicians. I asked why. She shrugged. He's a creative type. He'll vibe better with them than with your coworkers. My coworkers. Funny. The only people who still thought this wedding was a celebration. The tipping point, though, the one thing I can't forgive, later that day, I caught her humming one of his songs in the shower. Not one of ours. Not the one I played for her in the hospital when she broke her collarbone. Not the one from our first road trip. No. She was humming his words. And I realized something horrifying. This wedding? It wasn't a fresh start for her. It was a eulogy for the life she thought she'd have with him. And I was just the officiant. I didn't sleep that night. Again. That's 3 nights in a row. For anyone keeping track. 3 nights of lying next to someone who, in her own way, had already left. I watched the ceiling until it disappeared into morning, trying to figure out what was real anymore. It's a strange thing when the person you live with starts to feel like a house guest, especially when they're humming another man's poetry between brushing their teeth and making avocado toast. That morning, she asked if I could pick up ribbon for the centerpieces. Pale green, sage, she said, to match the eucalyptus theme. She kissed me on the cheek and smiled. That same, practice smile. The one I used to live for. Now it felt like wearing someone else's coat. Familiar, but uncomfortable. I didn't go to the craft store. I parked in front of the old bookstore near downtown and just sat there, engine running, watching the rain smear the windshield like tears I hadn't cried yet. I needed air. I needed answers. I needed a version of myself that didn't feel like a placeholder in his own life. That's when I did the thing I swore I wouldn't do. I messaged her sister. Nora and I weren't close. She was younger, sharper, always seemed to be watching me like she knew something I didn't. But I remembered what she said at brunch. The way she poked at Emily about the playlist, the memories, the what-ifs. I figured she knew more than she let on. I asked her straight. Has Emily talked about Silas lately? Like, more than usual? There was a long pause. Then a reply. You sure you want to know? I stared at that message for longer than I should have. Eventually, I typed back. Yes. Nora didn't give me details, but she didn't have to. Her response was just enough to confirm everything I feared, yet vague enough to keep me dangling. She's confused, Curtis. That's all I'll say. You didn't hear it from me. Confused. That word haunted me for hours. Confused people don't plan weddings. Confused people don't commit to another person's future. Confused people don't ask their ex-boyfriend to read a poem during the reception. Yeah, you read that right. Later that evening, Emily casually floated the idea while reorganizing the tea shelf like nothing had happened. Wouldn't it be sweet if Silas did a reading? He's so good with language. I dropped the mug I was holding. It shattered. I didn't apologize. She stared at the floor, then at me. It's just a poem, Curtis. You're being really sensitive. That was her favorite lie. It's not that serious. Not that serious that she messaged him late at night for creative feedback. Not that serious that she still wears the necklace he gave her, the one I thought was just some Etsy thing. Not that serious that I found printed lyrics of his songs in the back of her closet, folded neatly behind a box labeled Old Journals. It's not that serious, but it's enough to make me feel like a guest in my own wedding. It's enough to make me think she wants him to see her walk down the aisle, not to marry me, but to punish him for not marrying her. And you know what the worst part is? I started rehearsing what I would say when I call it all off. I rehearse it every day. I just haven't said it out loud yet. Because somewhere deep in the stupid, bruised part of me, I'm still hoping she'll turn around, look at me like she used to, and say his name means nothing. But I know better. She's already chosen the ghost. I'm just the body in the suit. I finally picked up the suit, the one I was supposed to wear standing beside her, watching her walk down the aisle like some scene out of a carefully curated Pinterest board. It was still in the plastic when I brought it home. Charcoal black, slim fit, the kind she said made me look less tired. It hung on the back of our bedroom door like a silent witness, watching us every night while we pretended to be normal. Or rather, while she pretended and I deteriorated. I didn't try it on. I didn't need to. I already knew it would fit. Not because it was tailored, but because I had been molding myself to fit into this entire fantasy for months. Maybe years. The yes dear responses. The themed weekends. The save the dates with gold embossing I never even liked. I was trying to be the kind of man a woman settles for. Not the man she writes poetry about. You want to know the strangest part? She never said, I love you first. Not once. Not in 4 years. I always initiated. I always reached out across the chasm and hoped she'd meet me halfway. And she did, technically. She said it back. With a smile. A touch. A nod. But never with that urgency. That breathless, terrified vulnerability people get when they're afraid to lose something real. She was never afraid to lose me. But when I asked her, stupidly, casually, trembling, if she had told Silas he was invited yet, her eyes flashed. Just for a second. Not panic. Not guilt. Something stranger. Protectiveness. I'm still figuring out how, she said. It's delicate. Delicate. Like he was a wild animal she didn't want to spook. Like she needed to approach slowly or he'd vanish back into the trees. She never used words like that for me. I asked her then, point blank, if she still had feelings for him. And she paused, just long enough to answer the question without actually answering it. Not feelings like that, she said, eyes darting to the window. Not feelings like that. Do you know how fast your body can go cold? It's not gradual, like movies make it out to be. It's instant. Like blood withdrawal. My hand stopped working. My mouth was dry. I was staring at the woman I was supposed to marry and realizing that she had written a whole narrative where I was the understudy, not the lead. I should have walked away then. I should have said something final, something irreversible. But instead, I did what cowards do. I stayed. I nodded. I made dinner. And that night, while she watched some romantic drama on Netflix and cried at someone else's heartbreak, I opened my laptop and started digging. Not into her messages. I'd already done that, remember? No, this time I looked for him. I found him in less than 10 minutes. A musician/poet with an ego big enough to fill an amphitheater. Website still active. Instagram full of moody close-ups and blurry forests. Married. 2 kids. And yet, every caption felt like a coded message. A breadcrumb trail for someone to follow. There was one post from a few months ago. A black and white photo of a window cracked open in the rain. The caption said, "Some things you never close, no matter how much time passes." The comments were turned off. I don't believe in signs, but that one nearly made me punch the wall. I closed the laptop, sat there for a long time, in silence, in the dark, with the wedding suit still hanging behind me like a shadow of a man I'd never fully become. And all I could think was, what kind of person invites the love of their life to watch them marry someone else? Unless they're hoping he'll stop the ceremony. Unless they're testing him. Not me. And if that's true, if this entire wedding is just a stage and I'm the background prop in her little performance, then I don't know what scares me more. That he'll show up. Or that he won't. I didn't know she'd written her vows already. I stumbled upon them by accident. She told me she was working on vendor emails, something about the lighting rig at the venue needing new specs, and asked if I could give her space for an hour or so. I went to the kitchen, made myself some coffee, stared at the microwave clock until it blinked nonsense. Then I wandered back in, thinking I'd grab my phone charger off the desk. That's all I was there for. Just the charger. But her screen was open. She hadn't minimized the window. Google Docs. Untitled document. Cursor still blinking. I shouldn't have read it. I know that. But I also shouldn't be marrying someone who kisses ghosts in her sleep. So I read it. And now I can't unread it. It started simple enough. Flowery metaphors, promises about laughter in the silence, and holding space for storms. Classic Emily. Romantic, vague, poetic. But as I kept going, something started to shift. She never once used my name. Not even once. She wrote, "You have always felt like home. Even when I hated the house." She wrote, "You taught me how to fall apart and still be whole." She wrote, "I'll always wonder if we would have made it, but I know this isn't our ending. Just another page." And then the line that knocked the air out of me like a sucker punch to the throat. "If you're there, I'll know." I stood there with my hand gripping the side of the desk, my own reflection warped in the black screen of the unused monitor. I read the sentence again and again. "If you're there, I'll know." That wasn't to me. She didn't mean me. I didn't teach her how to fall apart. I didn't feel like home when she hated the house. That line, "If you're there," that was a message. A signal. A lighthouse beam through fog, hoping the right ship crashes into shore. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the coffee mug still in my hand across the room. Instead, I quietly closed the document, unplugged my charger, and left. I didn't say anything. Not that night. Not the next morning. I think part of me wanted to give her a chance to lie to my face, just to see if she'd take it. And she did, like clockwork. The next morning, I asked, "How'd the vows go?" She smiled. "I haven't even started. Can't find the right words yet." I nodded. "You will." She kissed me, said, "Thanks for being patient with me." I felt like a criminal returning to the scene of a murder, and I still said nothing. That night, I lay in bed, eyes wide open, thinking about the absurdity of it all. I had helped pick the venue, the linens, the stupid handmade cocktail menu named after our pets. And all the while, She was drafting love letters to a man who might not even show up. I had signed contracts, drained my savings, and smiled in engagement photos, while she rehearsed a second act for a romance I was never a part of. It wasn't even betrayal that hurt the most. It was erasure. Like I was a stand-in for the story she almost got, but never quite finished. You want to know how sick it got? I started to consider letting it happen. I thought, maybe if she sees him, really sees him, she'll finally let him go. Maybe once and for all, she'll stop carrying his name like a secret language. Maybe she'll look at him and realize the fantasy is dead, that he's just a man. A tired, balding dad with a mortgage and a gut and a wife who doesn't know he still sends voice notes to someone else's fiancé. But the truth is, she doesn't want reality. She wants mythology. And in her mind, Silas is still writing poems under moonlight, waiting in some imaginary limbo, unfinished. And I, the one who stayed, who showed up, who built a life with her piece by piece. I'm just a placeholder for the pages she never got to write. So now, every time I look at her, I wonder, is she marrying me? Or just finally closing the book she never got to finish? Because if it's the second one, then this wedding is a funeral after all. Just not for us. For me. 3 nights before the wedding, I sat on the floor of our shared storage unit and stared at a box labeled college stuff. It wasn't mine. It was hers. The handwriting was neat and small, her signature lowercase e's with the slanted tops. I knew I shouldn't be there. I told her I was heading to the florist for a final consultation. But I didn't. I drove to the edge of the city, let myself in with the spare key, and sat cross-legged on the cold concrete, surrounded by a life I didn't fully belong to. The box had tape that had been cut before, more than once. Not carelessly, but enough to know she'd revisited it over the years. Curiosity didn't even feel like the right word for why I opened it. Desperation, maybe. Or self-destruction. Inside, a faded university hoodie, 2 crumpled programs from gallery shows, an old Polaroid camera, and near the bottom, a thin, leather-bound notebook. I hesitated, fingers hovering over it like it might catch fire if I touched it. Then I pulled it out. It wasn't a diary. It was worse. It was a poetry journal, and page after page was filled with verses about him. Silas. I knew it was him because of the names, the dates, the details, the way she referred to the ink on your collarbone, and the hummingbird tattoo behind your left ear. Things I'd seen once, in passing, on his social media. It wasn't even subtle. These weren't metaphors. They were memories, codified into verse. Some were messy, scratched out, rewritten. Others were pristine. But the one that gutted me was near the middle. The handwriting smaller, tighter. She had written it on their anniversary. Their anniversary. 3 years after they had already broken up. It read, "You let me go so quietly. I still check the silence for your voice." I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just sat there, flipping through pages like I was reading someone else's life. Like I was eavesdropping on a reality that continued in parallel, long after the relationship ended. I realized something bone deep in that moment. She never left him. Not really. She just rerouted the ache. And I was the new container. I didn't take the journal with me. I didn't confront her. I didn't burn it, though the thought danced through my brain like a candle begging for oxygen. Instead, I gently placed it back in the box, closed the lid, and sealed it again with the tape I brought in my jacket pocket. That night, at dinner, she told me she wanted to write her vows together, to make it feel more us. She stirred her pasta, avoided eye contact, and smiled like a woman trying to convince herself of something. I said sure. We sat at the table, fingers stained with ink, brainstorming lines like 2 strangers trying to co-author a script they'd both auditioned for but never really understood. She kept suggesting metaphors about oceans and bridges. I kept suggesting silence. At one point, she said, maybe we can include something about how we're each other's future. Each other's future. Not only, not last, just a placeholder. A marker in time. I wanted to ask her, if Silas showed up on our wedding day, dripping regret, standing in the back row with that unreadable expression he always wears in photos, what would she do? Would she still take my hand? Or would I see it in her eyes? That flicker, that question, what if? Because right now, I am not her person. I am her decision. I am her plan. I am her stability. Her safety. Her maybe it's time to grow up choice. I am the man who buys the right brand of oat milk and folds the towels in thirds. I am dependable, lovable even. but I am not unforgettable. And somewhere deep down, I think she resents me for that. I think she hates that I showed up, stayed, committed. I think she wanted me to break first, to fail, so she could justify carrying his ghost a little longer. But I didn't. I stayed. And now, I think she's punishing me for it. The day before the wedding felt like being underwater in a room full of people pretending they could breathe just fine. Everything was staged. The rehearsal, the flower arrangements, the laughter, the awkward family introductions. I floated through it like a ghost in my own skin, smiling when expected, nodding at jokes I didn't hear, answering questions with pre-recorded lines. I wasn't present. I was observing a version of myself perform a role that had already been cast for him. Even my own mother looked at me funny when I said I wasn't nervous. She pulled me aside, her fingers tightening around my elbow just slightly. "Are you okay?" she asked, low and careful. I said yeah. She studied my face for a moment, then let go. "Well, you'd tell me if you weren't, right?" I smiled. That empty, quiet smile I'd mastered over the last few weeks. Of course. But I wouldn't. I couldn't. Because if I said it out loud, if I confessed the gut-deep certainty that I was about to marry someone who'd already given her heart away, then I'd have to do something about it. I'd have to stop this. And I was too far in. We all were. During the rehearsal, she held my hand as we walked down the aisle to nowhere. Her palm was cold. I remember that detail like it matters, even though it doesn't. She looked beautiful, of course. Everyone said so. The bridesmaids teared up. Her aunt took 1,000 pictures, and Silas's name never once came up. But I thought about him the entire time. I imagined him leaning against the frame of the church doors, arms crossed, waiting for the signal. I imagined him standing outside, staring up at the stained glass windows, wondering if she really meant it when she sent the invite. I imagined him driving past, unable to stop himself from looking, but too proud to come inside. Later that night, when everyone had filtered out and it was just us in the apartment, she played music on the speaker and danced barefoot across the living room. Her wine glass tilted in her hand, mascara slightly smudged, hair down and free. "You're being quiet," she said, twirling. "I'm just tired," I replied. She came over, dropped onto the couch beside me, and curled into my side. "You know what I realized today?" "What?" "This is really happening." Her voice was soft, almost unsure. "Yeah," I said, staring straight ahead. "It is." She exhaled, long and slow, like the pressure had finally caught up to her. "Do you ever think about how different everything could have been?" There it was, buried in the question like a knife beneath a napkin. "Sure," I answered cautiously. "But we're here now." She nodded slowly. "Yeah, we are." She didn't say his name. She didn't have to. I knew what she meant. I knew what different looked like in her head. And it wasn't me sitting beside her. It was him, poetic and tragic and unfinished. That night, while she slept beside me for the last time as my fiancé, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting the minutes. I thought about the boy I used to be before her. How I used to believe that showing up, loving hard, and staying loyal was enough to matter. I thought about all the ways I had tried to make her feel safe, known, chosen. But you can't compete with someone who exists more vividly in memory than you do in reality. You can't fight a ghost, especially when the person you love keeps setting a place for him at the table. I rolled over and looked at her. Peaceful, dreaming, probably not of me. I whispered it into the dark, unsure if I wanted her to hear it or not. "I hope he doesn't show up." Because if he did, I knew she wouldn't run to him. But I wasn't sure she'd stay for me, either. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before the sun. The world was still. My phone was buzzing with texts from family, vendors, old college friends already landing at the airport. The group chat was blowing up with emojis, selfies, screenshots of outfits being steamed, ties being tied, gifts being wrapped. I sat on the edge of the bed, feet on the floor, watching her sleep one last time. She looked peaceful, innocent even, but there was a strange relief in my chest, not bitter, not angry, just stillness. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even numb anymore. I was just ready, not ready to marry her, ready to stop pretending I didn't know the truth. I didn't make a scene. No drama. No runaway groom. No yelling down the hallway or dramatic speeches in front of guests. I simply left a note. It wasn't long, just enough to say what I needed. "Emily, this wedding was supposed to be about two people choosing each other fully. But I think part of your heart is still living in a place I was never invited to. That's okay. I hope one day you find peace with that. But I won't keep pretending that silence doesn't speak louder than love. I wish you the kind of love that doesn't need a poem to feel real. Curtis. I left the suit hanging behind the door. I packed a small bag. I got in the car, drove past the venue, past the flower shop, past the place we had our first date. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even look back. Instead, I drove north, nowhere specific in mind, just away. The roads opened up, trees blurred by. The wind finally didn't feel like it was pressing against me. By late afternoon, I was on a rocky beach somewhere I'd never been. No service, no people, just water stretching out like possibility. And for the first time in months, I sat there and thought not about her, or him, or what could have been, but about me. What I wanted. Who I was before I shrunk myself into the shape of someone else's comfort. And you know what? I felt free. Not in the reckless, rebellious way, but in the way a deep breath feels after holding it in for too long. In the way sunlight feels when you're not bracing for the storm anymore. It's been 3 months now. I've moved to a smaller city. I work remotely. I adopted a dog from a shelter who hates poetry and loves peanut butter. I go to therapy. I hike. I read again, not to understand someone else, but to rediscover myself. Emily reached out once. A short message. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're happy. I replied, I am. I hope you are too. No anger. No wounds left to open. Just peace. And sometimes, I still think about the wedding. Not with regret, but with quiet pride. Because I didn't say, I do. And that was the first time I'd truly said yes to myself.